Hello, this is Ruth Avison from Pep English, and today I'm going to talk about IELTS Writing Part 1. There will be a Part 2 that I'll be posting shortly, and I have already done videos on the speaking part and also on vocabulary that you can use in Part 1. That's all on my YouTube channel on Pep English. Now, let's focus on Part 1 of the writing in the IELTS. Now, the main thing to consider is basically the IELTS is, the Part 1 is a chart. It could be a pie chart, a graph, or a process that you have to describe really clearly. Only describe. And you have to be crystal clear. So clear that if, for example, you're describing it to me and I can't see anything, I cannot see the graph, but I can see exactly everything that entails because you've told me exactly the step-by-step process or exactly what the graph is showing us. We do not want any analysis. And honestly, it's very tempting because that's often what we're asked to do at school. Analyze this, analyze that, read between the lines, etc. But in this exercise, this is really not what we want. It's purely a descriptive exercise. So we do not want, for example, there were water shortages in Brazil because at the time there was this, this and this. No, just the water shortage and the percentage compared to another year, and that's it. Nothing else, just what's on the graph. That's really, really important. Don't forget that the word count is very short. You have a minimum of 150 words. So 150 words means a minimum, means that really is a minimum. Do not go under 150 words or you will lose points. You must stay at about 150 to 165 would be ideal. If you go on too much more than that, you're probably using too much. You're probably going off on a tangent or using too many words, being too wordy, because in task 1 it's best just to be short, precise, and you're only describing. So you don't need more than 165 words. I'd say it's a good rule of thumb is to try and aim for around that amount, and that way you're safe. So don't go below the word count. The good way of practicing is really writing yourself or doing it on the computer if you're doing the computer-based one, really to get an idea of how many you're writing, how much that takes up on a piece of paper, so that you're not counting during exam time. So really to try and get a feel for what 150 to 165 words looks like on paper. Another thing to take into consideration is, of course, clarity. So clarity. Using precise vocabulary that relates to graphs. I've done another video on that, talking about rising, falling, plummet, different vocabulary that when we're talking about statistics is very important. That can really help you be precise and less wordy. Clarity comes also under using clear paragraphs. You need an introduction, you need paragraphs, and you need a conclusion. Now, in the introduction or the conclusion, you need an overview. What we call an overview is what is the main gist of this chart or graph that you're describing. What's the overall point? This is very important. It can be in the introduction or in the conclusion. That's really up to you. Both work, but it has to be there. That's really important. For you to gain points, you really do have to have an overview. Then, of course, I talked about precise vocabulary, but also what we call cohesive devices or linkers on the one hand, on the other hand, however, although, those sort of words need to be used very fluently without standing out too much, because basically when they're used and when they give a real flow to what you're saying, they don't stand out because they all become part of the text. So don't shove them in to use linkers. Try and really use them cohesively because that really is the point of it. You're not going to gain points because you've used however. You'll gain points if you used however appropriately, that links and that really gives cohesion to your work. And of course, Relevance. Everything has to be relevant. Make sure you stick to the topic. It's short, it's precise. Try and take about 20 minutes for task 1 and 40 minutes for task 2. Try not to go over that, and leave yourself time to edit. Another piece of advice I often give students is you have to make sure your paragraphs are clear, but why don't you leave a space, a line in between what you're saying so that you can go back and edit. That's obviously if you're doing it by hand. If you're doing the computer version, you can make changes easier. But really, so you've got space to add things. If you see afterwards when you're editing, it doesn't become all crammed up, that the examiner can read what you're writing easily. That's very important. So leave a double space. That does help, but make sure your paragraphs are clear. And the double space doesn't take that away. Because of course paragraphs, we have to have paragraphs. Very important. I hope that this has helped. And please leave me a comment if you've got any questions. I'm going to do a video also on part 2, which I'll be posting shortly. And as I said, I've got other videos that you can also watch related to this. Would be the one on talking about statistics. That is really related to task 1. Thank you very much. That was Ruth Avison from Pep English on the IELTS Writing Part 1. Thank you.